of destiny is to make them establish. So my guests and I bring you messages to establish what you need to know in the present. And also, I like working with angels and the calmness they bring. Now, in a moment, I will introduce you to my wonderful guest, Lynne Bardell. But before that, I'd like to say thank you so much for watching the show live at a later date, as it means a lot to me to connect with like-minded women. Now, if you've never met before, then my name is Ray, and I love to help women to crossroads in their life, heal their past, create their future, and transform their present so they can take charge of their destiny in the here and now. I'm the founder of Radiant Angel Energy, and I use future life progression, past life regression, angelic Reiki, angel oracle cards, guided meditations, hypnosis to help women who feel lost get clear on their reason for being here. And I've also created some transformational packages that will help you take charge of your destiny. Now, each episode of the show covers various themes of your journey, a mini guided meditation or angel card reading with the wisdom of my wonderful guests, like today's guest, Lynne Bardell, who will be sharing how over the last 40 years she has worked and played harder. But for a lot of that time, she wasn't actually present in her own life. And that has a significant impact on the decisions she made and the outcomes that resulted from those decisions. Learning about mindfulness, meditation, and positive psychology started a shift change in not only how Lynne lives her life, but also her perception of time, her relationship with herself and others, and her hope for the future. Now, after a long and rewarding career in 2 UK police services, Lynne retrained as a professional coach, completed an MSc in applied positive psychology and coaching psychology, and took the challenging decision to leave her career to become a full-time caregiver for an elderly relative, and founded the charity Thriving Carer. Now, as an active caregiver, she now uses her research experience, adult education training, coaching knowledge, and experience to support other carers throughout their caring journey, a career passion that enables her to continue to make positive impacts on people's lives. Now, Lynne is a neurodivergent with various conditions such as ADD, dyslexia, and dyscalculia, and I'm sure I pronounced that probably wrong. Receiving the diagnosis later in life, she appreciates that many people experience life feeling different, but often can't identify why. Now, in addition to coaching carers and post-caring, Lynne specialises in coaching adults, whether they've received a formal diagnosis or not, to thrive and grow in their difference and achieve their goals and dreams. Lynne has also been a volunteer for over 40 years, has a passion for learning, is a semi-professional photographer, and is currently a keen gardener. So with all of that, hello, Lynne, and welcome to the Angels and Destiny show. How are you today?
Hi, Ray. Thank you very much for inviting me. Yeah, good. Thank you very much, and looking forward to having a chat with you and sharing some of my bumps in my journey, and hopefully they may be able to be insightful or help other people.
That would be brilliant. So before we get into this fascinating conversation, I want to remind you that not only can you share this video, but you can also ask questions, leave comments and thoughts, as both Lynne and I want to be part of this conversation. So please don't be shy. So Lynne, why don't you tell us more about your journey and how you learned to turn up in your own life?
Yeah, so I've been around for quite a while, so it could be quite a long story, but I'm going to start by sort of bridging it down a little bit. And the first bit is that I didn't know I was neurodivergent, so I didn't receive a formal assessment. And a diagnosis is a difficult word because it alludes that there's something wrong, like an illness. And being neurodivergent is not that, it just means that your brain is wired differently. But if I could sort of take that knowledge I had now and reel back to sort of when I can first remember, it answers a lot of questions. Because really being young, being an only child in a home where probably one parent was also, I would say, neurodivergent as well. You don't know any different. You know what you know what you've grown up with in your life, and your values and your beliefs are built on your experiences from being very young. So I knew that I was highly sensitive. I knew that I really, as soon as I went to school, that never worked particularly well for me. I loved the running around and the chatting to my friends, and the sitting in the classroom bit, that just never worked that well. So the looking out the window or doodling on pieces of paper, was really the main part of my memory of school. Teachers didn't bully me. It was almost worse really. They just ignored me because everybody else was obviously concentrating and focusing on what was going on, and I wasn't, and I didn't know why, and I wasn't even aware that was happening. It was just a phase of my life that I was going through. School was just boring. I found it difficult to make lots of friends. I tended to have sort of one or two friends that I spent a lot of time with. I was very tall as a child, so I was bullied an awful lot. Went to a girls' school, and that whole period was just something that was just sort of laying there in the back of my head that something wasn't quite right. I didn't seem to experience school as even my friends did, who probably in hindsight weren't neurodivergent. So fast forward a little bit, what I did know from an early age is that I wanted to be a police officer. And one of my parents' friends, this was back in the early 70s, she was a sergeant, a female sergeant, which I know
Wow.
now, back in those days, was a big thing. What I didn't know, of course, was it was the women's section of the police, because women weren't actually allowed in or integrated. But anyway, she was a very tall, elegant, white-haired lady, and was just a huge role model for me. And I really, from that young age, knew that I wanted to protect and serve and be there for people, as you know, when she spoke about her job with such passion and kindness and gentleness. So that was a theme that always sort of was in my life and was there. Again, I didn't really know what a calling was then. I just knew that I liked helping people, and it made me feel good, and it made me feel less different, because a lot of my young life was around feeling different, again, going back to the school thing. So my life trundled on, and then I got married very young. I was 18, 19 years old. First of the not desperately good decisions I made. However, that's what I did. And things rolled on further in that relationship and didn't go too well. And at the time, you couldn't really join the police if you were divorced or getting divorced. It was a part of sort of the stability they wanted in people. So my career then, I was desperate to get into helping people, but it had to wait. So I waited, and I met my second husband. There'll be a bit of a theme emerging here, and a very different person and a lovely person. And at that point, I was able to join the police, and he joined a different service. But again, those things were still there, that the issues and the problems I had at school were now just in a different format. And in fact, it wasn't until I joined the police that I realised that I had a problem with numbers. And it's I don't know how you pronounce it either, but I pronounce it dyscalculus or dyscalculia, which is,
Oh, that
I'm not
sounds
sure
good.
that's right either, because I've got dyslexia, so it's a bit of a sort of a double whammy really. So knowing now that I had the dyslexia, which is the word blindness element of it, then it's just exactly the same, but it's with numbers. So I was out with my tutor, and we were doing a moving road check. So we were in the car, and we were following another vehicle, and I was calling it through on the radio, and I can't remember the car. It was, say, a black Mini or something, and it came back as a yellow Cortina. And my tutor was really annoyed at me, and he said, "Are you doing that on purpose, just to annoy control?" And I'm like, "Doing what?" He said, "You're turning the numbers around." So I didn't know I was doing that. So all the way through all of these things, writing statements was hard, but I just worked harder. And again, penny didn't drop, and life went on, and then that marriage didn't work. But in the meantime, I carried a firearm, which was a shock for a lot of people, and now I realise why. Because I've also got borderline dyspraxia, which means I'm incredibly clumsy. But I just worked very, very hard to achieve that, and there weren't many women at the time, and I was very, very proud of that, and worked with some brilliant guys who I'm still friends with. quite a few of them now, and they are amazing. And then I'd gone on to, I got promoted to sergeant. I held a national post working around England and in Europe. Went on and did my first degree, which I graduated at 39, which was a surprise for everybody, at least for me. Had to work really, really hard. And again, the penny didn't drop. That compared to the friends I made at the uni when we were talking about assignments, I seem to be working 2 or 3 times harder than them. Still got a 2-1, massive achievement. And then life went on, and I got promoted again. So at all these points, I was aware that things weren't the same as other people. But fortunately for me, I never got to the point where I thought there was something wrong with me. I just knew I was different to other people. I was either highly emotional and as time's gone on, I didn't have any emotions at all. I seem to flip between the two things. I get highly excited about things, and I'm irritatingly positive most of the time. I am hyperactive, although I don't have the H in the ADHD. I think I'm just too old now. I'm tired to have the hyperactive bit. But the whole attention thing, I wasn't aware of it. I just knew that I had to work and focus really hard. But I could get, when I do focus, a huge amount of work done. But when I can't focus well, then that's when I'm down rabbit holes, and that's when I can lose time. And time became quite a big thing for me, because I realised I was losing so much time. So going on a little bit further, I took some time out when a family member wasn't well, so I had a career break from the police, worked in the NHS for a while, and then started to realise actually then I may need to have a life outside the police. So that's when I started to look for something else where I knew I could still serve, still support people, but in a different way. And that's why I decided to train as a coach. And I have a foundation degree in coaching, and obviously now a master's as a coaching psychologist. But again, all the way through this, penny didn't drop. And it wasn't until the university paid for me to have a formal educational psychology assessment, which was really hard work. 3 hours of really having to concentrate, which in my world is about 2 hours and 50 minutes longer than I would normally be able to concentrate. It really did have that wake up moment that, yes, there is something different about my brain. There's nothing wrong with me at all. And it was an aha moment which released a huge amount of pent up, I suppose, frustration and not anger at myself, because I've never blamed myself for any of this or anybody else. It's just, it is what it is. But that's, I suppose, a policing thing that you do tend to sort of just, it is what it is. But what it did do was trigger the fact that I now had to start owning that. And then it just couldn't be, I go down rabbit holes and, that's just the way I am, or I can't do this because that's just what I have trouble focusing or whatever. I had to start owning it because it is me. And when I did start unpicking it and I did start looking back, I realised that a lot of the decisions that I'd made, both at school, subsequently from school, marriages, careers, what I did in the police, what I didn't do, what I perhaps had more of a leaning to do, moving really right up until that point when I started positive psychology and I started to really think differently. It wasn't clear until that point as the fact that I had actually just sleptwalked through decades of my life. Had I have known that I was neurotypical when I was at school, it wasn't a thing. A thing, and I am glad that the children do get, when they have the opportunity, they do get the opportunity of being, having that assessment and perhaps having that support, whether it's autism or ADHD or dyspraxia, whatever it is. But I woke up to the fact that I hadn't been awake, and it answered so many, not questions, but it answered, I think, a lot of things that I've been asking myself as to why do I keep making mistakes that just in hindsight, the wonder of hindsight, if I had looked back, I wouldn't have made. If I had taken the time to consider where I was and actually be present, that those decisions, I may still have made them. I have no idea. And what I don't do is ever look back and regret. Never. I regret
No.
anything I've done in my life ever. Because everything I've done has got me to the point where I'm now. And obviously you and I, Ray, met. And I'm talking to your lovely community now. And everything has happened for a reason. So I don't regret anything. Could I have made some slightly less bizarre choices? Probably. But as a result of the decisions I've made, I was posted by the government to advise two foreign governments on the post-reconstruction of the police. I lived and worked in the Balkans, have amazing friends there. I still see them, hoping to go and see soon. I've got friends all over the world I've worked with because I've been on an international mission. I've had a wonderful life. It's been difficult, and a lot of that I've made difficult myself.
Yeah.
And I never blame anybody. Even some of the things that have happened to me haven't been very nice. And I still cannot blame anybody for any of that because ultimately it was my decision to do the things that I did. So now I'm in an amazing position where my time has shifted. So a really good book to read around this is Daniel Kahneman. He's a professor, and he wrote a book called System 1 and System 2. So fast thinking and slow thinking. And it's fast thinking, if you like, is when you're in autopilot, so you're driving to work the same route, the same time every single day. And if I asked you when you got to work, did you see anything unusual or did anything happen? You probably couldn't tell me because your brain is, you're working the gears, you're doing that, you turn left there, you go there. And unless something happens to make that an unusual trip, you won't be able to remember any part of that. Excuse me. System 2 is when we are present. So on that trip, you're driving every single day, suddenly somebody cuts in front of you. You brake really sharply, and then you get a funny feeling in your tummy, and then you probably explain to them, what they've done wrong. Hand gestures. Yeah. You're present. And that is the difference between living a life where you are doing things because you are not thinking around what it is that you're actually doing. Could you do things differently? Is this working well for me? Is it not working well for me? And there's a lot of things we were chatting earlier about, like ironing is definitely a system 1 sort of thing. You don't need to be particularly present. You need to be aware because it's a hot iron or you may trip over something. But it's something that you can do which requires less presence than something like driving where you should be present. But making big decisions, considering things, and when you're engaging with people is giving them the respect and the time to be present when you're talking to them, not on your mobile phone, not listening to something else, and it's that distinction now for me that is becoming clearer and clearer. This is still very much a work in progress. So I'm only sort of 3 or 4 years into really this wake up part now, and now I see so many more opportunities, and I can bring myself to the present so much quicker now. So I still go off down rabbit holes. I can lose hours, particularly because of my ADD. And it's like having a 5-year-old in your head that's in control quite a lot of the time. And when I'm researching, perhaps for writing an article for Thriving Carer or something like that, or if I was writing a paper for my master's, I can go down all these different rabbit holes and then another one and another one and another one. I'd still do that, but what I can do is catch myself earlier. And then I can make an informed decision about, do I want to continue? Say, actually, yes, I'm really enjoying what I'm looking at or what I'm reading, or I'm in the garden and I'm really enjoying what I'm doing. So I'm making an informed decision about that. Because I'm present and able to say, that's the decision I want to make, rather than losing time, years, decades, because I haven't actually looked at what it is that I'm doing and say, is this what I really want to do? And some of the consequences of not being present in my life are, and I am a people pleaser, I probably always will be, but I've done and agreed to things that I didn't really want to do, but because I wasn't present and someone said, oh yeah, come down here and do this. And I just, without thinking, and that's a theme here, without thinking, I've just gone, yes, okay, yeah, that'd be great. And partly it's because I want to please that person by saying yes. And the other is because I haven't actually stopped and thought, actually, I don't really want to do that. But I'm going to say I've said yes, so I'm morally bound to do it. And I have, my values are hugely important to me, and I do try and live by my values. But so one of the downsides is not being present, is the fact that you miss amazing opportunities that have been put in front of you, but because you're just blindly not concentrating and you're not seeing things because you're not present, you're not aware of them. And then conversely, other things that you don't really want to do that you might just say yes or agree to or do, because you're not actually there saying, yeah, actually, I do really want to do this. And it means that I may have to stop doing something else, like doing the masters, or it may be that actually to do that, I need to do something else first. And you can't make those decisions if you're just sleepwalking through time.
Yeah.
So I have gained a huge amount of time. And it's really the oddest thing I've noticed. I have still made some really not terribly brilliant decisions, even though I'm much more present, because I'm triggered. My dyslexia and ADD is triggered by things. So things like countdown clocks on funnels and things like that. I'm just a marketer's dream, because I used to get triggered by them all, and I've been sucked into more funnels than I'd like to admit to. And when I was earning a lot of money as an inspector, that was fine. But of course, as in now I'm an unpaid carer, and that's not so fun. And I'm not blaming the ADD, and I'm certainly not blaming people that do, those funnels. It's just a marketing tool, and it happens to trigger me. But again, because I wasn't aware of it, it resulted in me making some not terribly good financial decisions. I'm now aware of it, so I'm able to put control measures in. I still get caught up in them, and a couple of months ago, I still bought a little course. I was like, oh, I can't believe I did that. But the triggers, the control measures have worked. So now I have a limit. So if it's like £10 or under, then I'll just go wild.
Yeah.
But if it's sort of like around the £50 mark or something like that, then what I do now is I say, okay, well, I'm going to leave it for an hour, and I'm going to sit down and write down on a piece of paper why I need that course and why I can't wait till it comes up again. And at the end of that, I think actually, yes, I still want to do it, then I do it. Anything bigger than that, then I said to myself, I will not do anything for 24 hours, and I have to discuss it with a grown-up. So I've got friends who know what my triggers are, and quite often at the end of that conversation, it'll be, yeah, I don't really need whatever that new whizzy course is. I am still the proud owner of many, many, many courses that I've actually done. And that's good, because I will get to them, all of them, eventually. But had I not woken up, if I had not, realised that I wasn't being present in my own life, I would never have known what was happening to me. And I couldn't then do something about it. So the magic happens when you just stop. When you literally just stop and give your brain time to think, assimilate where it is that you are, what you need to do, to think differently, to start problem solving, creativity is a wonderful part of being neurodivergent. And it's something that I'm passionate photography and all that I love. But I never gave myself time to use that. I was always in a hurry, always needing to do something. Doing one thing, but I need to do something else. Now, because of the psychology, I know that actually we're almost sure now that multitasking does not happen. What it actually happens is we're micro splitting between different jobs. And actually, most of us can't do any one of those particularly well. So I'm the master of doing 4 or 5 things at the same time. And now I'm really grown up with myself and say, this is actually really important. I need to do it now. So I need to turn off the triggers, social media things. I need to make sure that I can give myself time. All of these things I could have been doing for the last 40 years, but I didn't. But I can do them now. And I am so grateful for the fact that that opportunity of doing the masters, having that assessment from university, having the conversations that I've had now, all the research and the learning has got me to a point where I'm excited about how I can mould and change the next phase of my life, because otherwise what I would have done was just step through the whole lot.
Yeah. So literally you just woke up and it's like, and it's amazing how just one thing, one assessment can actually completely change your whole outlook um, on on life, and you can actually reframe things using what those differences are, and you can actually then use them for your advantage.
Yes, that's interesting, because when I started, obviously I did the foundation degree in coaching before I did the area of coaching psychologist. And one of the things that I learned very early on is one of the powerful questions that when you're coaching a client and supporting them is, particularly if it's a behavioural thing, something they want to achieve or do, like run a marathon or something like that, is actually say to someone and ask them to think about what they have done in the past, perhaps a big hurdle they've got over, a big achievement, something, perhaps like doing a qualification or running a race, or something that they've done in the past where they've had to work hard, think differently, and they've achieved what it is. How can, although you can't translate one thing directly onto another because that time has changed, you're a different person now, but you can break down the core things that you did. You can re-evaluate them and place them in a new scenario. And actually, quite often, they will work again. And also, it shows you that you are more than capable of doing that.
Yeah.
And emotional resilience is something I really am, and that's why I work with a lot of with unpaid carers and working carers. It's emotional resilience is phenomenal, but it is something that you have to keep working on. It's not that, something really bad happens, you build resilience, you bounce back up, and then that's it for the rest of your life. No, it isn't. It's around learning those different tools when something happens. And when I coach neurodivergent clients, we use something called clean language. And it's the questions at the end are of that session, when you're talking to them, what worked well, what one thing worked well, what one thing didn't work well, and next time, what could you do differently, or what would work better? And just those 3 questions, if you do nothing else, and you look at something that happens and it doesn't turn out how you hoped it would, or it blows up in your face, and you think, oh, I'm never doing that again. Rather than catastrophizing it or attaching negative emotions to it, just stop and say, okay, well, what worked well? Well, actually, I met somebody new, or I got something, that I didn't know before. What didn't work well? Well, that happened. And what one thing can I do differently to change the outcome in the future? Very powerful questions, but very, very simple. And that is what I've learned really from, and I go back now and think the challenges that I have now are, again, completely different. Being an unpaid carer is the hardest role I've ever done in my life. And I've carried firearms, I've been firearms commander, public order commander, I've done all sorts of things. But there is nothing compares to this role. And I'm having to now draw on all those things. A lot of the things that I did really didn't go very well at all. I'm now able to look back and go, okay, well, actually, what I did learn is this, and what I could try is that. And if it doesn't happen, if it doesn't work, okay,
Yeah.
no biggie. It's come back. What worked well? What didn't work well? What could I do differently?
Yeah. So how did you come to set up Thriving Carers?
It was,
Because you've had all this stuff that you were doing. You had everything you were dealing with. It's like, okay, I'm gonna start a charity.
yeah, and that's a little bit that leads you into the world of my 5-year-old, because a lot of the stuff I do, and people who know me a long time just go, oh, there she goes, because I have at least 10 brilliant ideas a day. So I had two projects that I really wanted to do. So as I became a carer, and I knew that I was struggling. The practical side of it, not a problem. I'm a problem solver. I that whole part of it, I just completely nailed. And when I knew that I had to give up my career, I didn't have the chance to retire. I had to just resign. And the Met were very good, and they did support me, and I'm very grateful for that. But it gets to a point where operationally this doesn't work anymore. And I knew that I had to rethink what I was doing, so that's why I decided to train as a coach and not as a counsellor or anything else like that. That I had to find another career and starting a coaching company, and that's actually it's quite challenging because it's quite a fairly saturated market. So I had two ideas. The first one was the Secret Time Society, so that's linked to my change in the way I live my life of being present, and the fact that I found time from somewhere, which of course I haven't found any time at all. So it's that whole thing around helping people like me, because in the police I've spent, particularly when I was a PC and a sergeant, going to tragic incidents and then going to people's homes and having to tell them that a family member wasn't coming home, and that is just so devastating because you're part of the grief of that. And I can remember every single one that I've done. And quite often you hear on the news when someone has perhaps survived a tragic accident or cancer, or people have been involved in these more regular now disasters, and people say, I want to live life every day now. Things look different, things smell different. And I wanted people to have that same revelation that I had, but without having to go through a tragedy or a life-changing event first. So that's how the Secret Time Society sort of started. And then because I was struggling so much with the emotional part of caring, I thought, well, I must not be the only person that's like psychologically is really struggling. So I started doing loads of research, couldn't find any evidence-based, online, free at source psychological support. There are amazing, amazing boots on the ground carer support groups. They're phenomenal. Obviously, COVID's changed a lot of what they could do, but I couldn't find anything specifically online that was for all carers. So it was a different name. It was Carers Hearts, but that's how Thriving Carer started. So I do a blog and a podcast twice a month, and it's around some quite tricky topics to do with caring. So I'm very open and honest about the struggles I've had. For instance, I've always liked to drink, and I found I was pretty good at it.
And the job helped.
Yeah, as I say, and being the only woman on a team of guys sort of helped with that when I was a prime officer. But listen. But I found that I was starting to use it to dampen down difficult emotions and things like that. And then doing research around it, I was reading these articles and these academic papers thinking, actually, that's me. And I realised I saw that in myself. So I did a podcast and a blog called Make Mine a Large One, self-medicating with alcohol and prescription drugs. So that's over-the-counter stuff, not the realms of addiction, which is that's out of my area of expertise. So I decided that actually I needed to walk my own talk here, and on the 1st of January, I gave up wine or all alcohol for the year. And I'm fundraising for an amazing charity down in Thanet Disabled Riding Centre. So they're keeping me accountable as well. But I realised that actually, if I continue, it's like the sleepwalking through your life. If I saw what the problem was and I didn't do anything differently, then the
Yeah.
outcome is pretty obvious. And I was reading and writing and talking on the podcast about what the outcome would be. So it's like, I think, is it Einstein's definition of insanity is continually doing the same thing and expecting a different outcome. And that sort of sums up really, I think the present, being mindful, the fact that if you know that something's not working, there's an element of saying, if I just don't look, if I just ignore it, it'll just sort of go away, and it won't. And that's really what Thriving Carer is for me, is having those difficult conversations for other people, so they can go, first of all, oh, it's not just me that feels like that. Because when you know that you're not alone, when you know that somebody else is struggling with, anger or grief or guilt, then it's easier to take that step to try and do something to help yourself. So then, of course, we got COVID, and then so rather than starting the membership for the Secret Time Society first, and then I was going to do the Thriving Carer stuff, what I thought I would do is flip it around. So I started Thriving Carer first. So it's a very small charity, and I don't know where it's going. It's still very early doors, and I'm still sort of very much finding out where my community are and how I can help them. But I know where they are. I need to identify how I can help them, and I might need to do more research, academic research around that. And then the Secret Time Society, then that's definitely still rumbling on, but I've got some big choices, not choices, I've got some big decisions coming up in my caring role. So I'm present enough to know that I need to park those for the
Yeah.
moment until these big decisions, I can be clear in my head around what I need to do best for myself and my loved one.
Yeah.
Which, before I would be doing, a master's, probably another degree as well, and a course, and and
Yeah.
volunteering and doing something else. And I've realised actually, as much as I'd like to think I can do all these things, actually, I can't.
Yeah.
Not taking
Uh,
long.
but the thing is, there are so many carers out there that do feel alone, like there is no one else out there for them. So the fact that you've set that charity up to try and help them is really a great step. And anyone watching, if you're in that situation yourself or of anyone, contact Lynne. She can support you. She's been through it. She's lived it. She knows the right things. So reach out, because I think that's sometimes the thing with carers is you don't want to burden anyone else with your burdens. Does that make
It does.
does that
It's
sort of like sound
interesting
right?
because carers tend to gravitate to carers for a couple of reasons. The first of all is carers quite often like self-identify. Now, there's an awful lot, which I won't go into, a lot of reasons why people don't do that. But the other thing is, first of all, you're conscious of not constantly moaning isn't the right word, but when you're saying, because it is hard, and it doesn't matter whether you're caring remotely, you live with your loved one, you care for how many hours, it doesn't matter. But if you're constantly saying, oh yeah, they did this or they did that, or it's really hard, or I've got no money, which, I've got no money. One is that you feel that you're burdening your friends with that. And also, in all honesty, other people don't want to hear it, because in the back of their head, particularly my circumstance of my caring role, and it's different for parent carers, carers who are caring for a loved one, perhaps their partner, husband, wife, whatever. is that in the back of their head they're thinking that could be me. And it's almost, again, as if, if I don't hear about all your struggles, then I won't have to think about the reality of perhaps if that happens to me. And that's a shame, because it means sometimes the carer is unsupported and feels like, you know what, I can't even talk about it anymore. And unfortunately, that does happen. And, I have had people say to me, and it was not malicious, and there are people that I care about very much, but they don't necessarily appreciate the difference between, say, being a carer and perhaps, the parenting role and the caring role, which is different. Is that, well, if it's that difficult, get a carer in. And it's never meant, it's never meant maliciously or anything like
It's
that.
a horrible
It's just,
thing.
it seems from the outside to be the obvious answer, which it is. However, as is life, that's not the easy answer at all. So what you tend to do as a carer is you become your own worst enemy. So actually you'll make your own life harder, because you start to shut down. And that's where I was until fairly recently, that I just became emotionless completely. I managed to do such a good job of stopping myself from being hurt that I don't feel anything at all. Now, part of that is also my neurodiversity, I'm aware of that. So if we go back right to the beginning of my story, when I say I was a highly emotional person. So I rode that wave because I didn't understand why I was so emotional, and part of it is I have autistic traits. And then through being in the police for a long time and working with blokes for a long time, and then working with different cultures, I overcompensated, and I managed to shut down an awful lot of that emotion really well. And what I'm doing now is I'm emerging out of the other side of that, because I'm aware of the fact that I've gone too far with shutting down the emotions, and that what I need to do now is find that balance. Negative emotions, grief, sadness, all those things are really important, because they tell us something. They tell us something's not right. They tell us we need to pay attention to something. So blocking out negative emotions is never ever the answer. Doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter carer or not. It's about recognizing them for what they are, understanding that they do not define you. My anger, and I get angry a lot, does not define who I am. It's telling me that I need to pay attention to something externally in my environment, because I have insomnia as well a lot of the time, so I'm particularly tired. So instead of doing my gazillion things today, actually what I'm going to do is I'm just going to sit and read a book for a little while, and it really takes time. It's taken me 3 years nearly to be able to do that, and because I'm learning about the mindfulness, I did a meditation course. I can now actually recognise when I really, really need to take myself out and do some meditation. Or I enjoy mindfulness, and I do one mindful breath. So a count of 7 in, hold for a second, and a count of 11 out, because 11 actually is quite a lot. Oh, excuse me. By the time I've got to 11, actually you've emptied most of the air from your lungs. So when you breathe in again, you're giving yourself optimum fresh oxygen, gives your brain a chance to think, right, stop, what do I need to do? Do I need to think differently? And it's still a work in progress. So that's how Thriving Carer sort of came about. It's completely focused on the emotional and psychological needs of carers. I work with other support agencies in terms of more practical advice, like Carers UK, Carers Trust, brilliant charities, and they cover different areas, so I'll refer to them. And also working now with newly assessed clients who are autistic or with ADD, because a lot of that is around identity. Who are you? Who am I as a carer? Am I a police officer, ex-police officer? Am I a daughter? Am I an advocate or a nurse or a pharmacist? And all of these things we're struggling with. And that's what I did my dissertation, my master's on, was carer to post-carer identity transition. And it's all those things around who we are in different elements of our life. And the positive psychology element of that has been so powerful. And I won't go into positive psychology, it's too big a subject, but there's two elements to it. There's a newer one called 2.0, so positive psychology 2.0 or second wave, where it's like Viktor Frankl, so it's about meaning and purpose, about understanding, that suffering and pain is part of our life, and certainly, painful experiences are, but it's how we deal with them that defines us. And that's the difference, and you can't do that if you're not present.
Yeah. Absolutely perfect. And I mean, you've explained so much. It's absolutely amazing around the information that you've given out today, and your story itself. It should be an inspiration to everyone out there. But I love the way that it always comes back to being present, because obviously that's how I work as well. Is that everything is in the present? Even though I work with the past and the future, it all comes back to the present. And that's what I think a lot of people tend to forget these days, is that really we should be in the present, we should be here, and we should just be and allow.
Mm. Actually, one of the things that I got from my medication, unfortunately, he was one of my tutors in my masters, Itai, and he said in his course, that the meditation course that I did, was that we need to do, or we need to be being more and doing less. And I'm certainly trying that, because I'm a natural born doer. Just a fidget. I'm up and down, and that's the 5-year-old, because it needs to be doing something all the time. And to calm that is helping me become more focused, because I'm aware of it, because I'm present. So it's actually helping me manage some of the less positive things of my neurodiversity, which I wasn't able to do before. Go back to my explanation of school. I just looked out the window and talked. And my school reports, and I found them the other day, I was going through the garage, and they all said, nice girl, really pleasant, but if she focused, as much on learning as she does talking and looking out the window, she'll do well. And that sums up my entire academic career until I did my first degree. Was that? Why? Because the 5-year-old in my head was just really busy, being busy. And now I can quieten it. I'm never going to I don't want to make it go away. It's fine.
No.
But I can quieten it. And the only way I can do that is by being present and giving myself the kindness, the compassion to say, you're going to mess up. I've messed up loads of times in my life. I'm going to mess up loads of times in the future, but I'm going to be kind to myself and say, that's okay. It's never done, to harm anyone. It's just because some of the decisions I made haven't come out that well. And if they don't, that's okay as well.
Yeah. Absolutely perfect. That leads us really quite nicely on to this part of the show, where I always like to ask my guests each week whether they would like me to do a mini guided meditation or to pull an angel oracle card for themselves and those watching. So, Lynne, what would you like me
Well,
to
I think the
do?
oracle card would be nice, please.
Funny enough, I have them in my hand. Amazing that. Okay, so as always, with the cards, a quick cleanse and a bless. And thank you to Graham for all your comments that you've been putting in today,
Thank you very much, Graham.
and for everyone else, Michelle, Carla, and Suze for
Thank you,
watching.
everybody.
So,
Yeah.
what does Lynne and everyone watching this need to know for their highest good at this moment in time? Oops, no. What does Lynne and everyone who's watching this need to know for their highest good at this moment in time? Okay, that'll be the card that's come jumping out. Gates of Triumph. Success expands your life.
Oh, that's lovely. Oh, I love the colours on that.
It's a beautiful, beautiful card. So basically, what this is saying to me is that the gates of triumph now. It's kind of like those doors and those gates are opening for you now. Everything that you've been doing, every success you've had, is actually expanding your life and making it more complete and more open and pushing you forward on that journey. So it's kind of like saying, keep recognizing those successes that you're making, because every time you recognize that success, it's actually taking you on your next step on your journey. And that's for Lynne and everyone who's watching this. Be grateful of your successes, because when you recognize them, even the tiniest little ones, that puts you on the step. So you're definitely going in the right direction, Lynne. It's absolutely perfect. So yeah, so that's the card that.
Thank you very much. Yeah, that's good. So I've got some big decisions coming up and another change. So it's good to know that everything I've done is working towards that, and for everybody else as well.
Yeah, exactly. So, Lynne, do you have any insights or thoughts to leave our viewers?
Yeah, I think the three things that that came up when I was thinking about the Secret Time Society is to try and think about the three pillars that make a difference. And the first really is the fact that you have to take responsibility for your own life. And I, as a police officer over several decades, sadly saw many times when people didn't take responsibility for their life, and quite often was blaming other people, police, whatever, it doesn't really matter who. And I have never knowingly blamed others or situations, but I know that sometimes I haven't taken responsibility. So if you want a life, your best life, I know that's the key phrase at the moment, but if you want to live a life that you would want to look back on and be proud of, if you would want others to speak well of, then you have to take responsibility for your life. You can't take responsibility necessarily for the things that happen to you, because you have no locus of control of that. But you can absolutely take responsibility on how you react to it, how you deal with it. And that if something happens to you that's bad, that you don't necessarily turn that on to the fact that something else bad has to happen to somebody else. You can absorb it and say, okay, let that go. But I will take responsibility now, what I do moving forward. The second pillar is that you have to be open to the fact that you don't know everything. And that, sadly, I've seen that a lot as well, is that there are so many different opportunities to think differently and achieve a better outcome, or the same outcome but in a better way. And the last one is the fact that you actually need to take action, because I am a professional procrastinator, and I am up there with the best of them. And it's no point having the best ideas in the world and you're going to save the world if you don't take that first step and do something. And and what's worse is I'm a perfectionist as well. So it's worse, because then you leave it until you have to do it. And then when you're a perfectionist, you put yourself under even more pressure because it has to be perfect. So baby steps. Instead of my list of 10 things to do every day, I have a list with one thing. And that one thing is something I know is achievable and that I will do. And sometimes it's making a phone call or researching something, or sometimes it's something really big. And if I get two things done, that's great, but I do one thing every day. So 3 pillars is that you must take responsibility for your life and your outcomes and what you do. You must think differently. And also you must actually take action, otherwise the whole thing's pointless.
Perfect. Brilliant words of wisdom. So thank you so much for that. And I hope everyone that you've enjoyed this conversation and found it insightful, because I know I definitely have. So Lynne, if people want to connect with you, how do they do that?
So the website is www.thrivingcarer.org. So it's ORG.org. The email is inquiries@thrivingcarer.org. thrivingcarer.org. Or I've got the Facebook group, which is the same, it's all the same name, Thriving Care.
Yeah. So what I'll do is I'll actually post those links into the comments. So if people want to go on there, they just literally click on there and they go straight in. And that, so Graham says, thank you deeply, Lynne and Ray.
Thank you very much, and to everybody that's been here. It's been very nice to be with like-minded people.
Yeah. Thank you. So, of course, everyone, if you have reached that crossroads in your life and you need help finding your meaning of life and getting clear on your path, then I would love to be that guide for you. So please feel free to reach out and connect with me, and we can arrange a free 20, 30-minute video call to find out more about each other and whether I can actually help you take charge of your destiny. And of course, please feel free to join my weekly newsletter and receive a free future life progression recording where I take you into a future lifetime to get guidance and clarity that you can use in your current life, as well as a couple of other free gifts. So again, thank you everyone so much for watching, and thank you, Lynne, for being part of this conversation. And I'd like to invite you to share this video, as I'm sure there are more women and carers who feel lost and want to get clear on their destiny just like you. And if you are watching this on YouTube, then please feel free to subscribe. I always like new subscribers, helps boost me up, and hit that bell to be notified when the show goes live or when I post guided meditations. And I look forward to seeing you all same time, same place next week. Take care. Bye.
Thanks very much. Bye.